Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on how we can support parents during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is one of the webinars in our BVI Mental Health and Psychosocial Support Webinar Series, which is an initiative that's part of a project between the government of BVI and the Pan American Health Organization, a project on mental health and psychosocial support, and also building individual and community resilience. Today we have two presentations. We're going to start with a presentation by Ms. Kaya Huggins-McKenzie, who is a mental health therapist at the Department of Community Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services at the BVI Health Services Authority, and also by Ms. Mara Dean, an occupational therapist assistant, also with the Department of Community Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services at the BVI Health Services Authority. And after that, we will have a second presentation from Drs. Alan Dyer and Jacqueline Prasada. I'll introduce them more formally right before their presentation. So I ask that we hold all questions until the end. We'll leave about 15 minutes for a question and answer session. So your mics will be muted when you enter the room, and during the question and answer session, you'll be able to raise your hand. I can unmute your microphones and you can make a comment or ask a question. And before we get started, I would also like to kindly ask that you help us by participating in a brief survey that you will automatically be sent as soon as the webinar ends. This survey will only take you a couple minutes, and it will really help us to improve the quality of these webinars. So thank you again for joining us. And without further ado, I will pass it over to our first presenter, Ms. Kaya McKenzie. Kaya, I'm going to make you the presenter right now. All right, there you are.
Good afternoon, everyone. This afternoon's presentation, we will explore how we can create a cohesive parenting structure that will promote emotional wellness for both parents and children. You will have a conversation to answer 5 questions as it relates to parenting through the pandemic. The questions for exploration are: what does everyday parenting look like? What makes parenting through the pandemic any different? What are some basic coping strategies that parents can use? How are children affected by parents during the pandemic? How can parents balance their parenting role with other responsibilities and anxiety during this pandemic? And joining me would be Ms. Mara Dean later on. All right, so I hope that this presentation will certainly provide some level of support to our parents who are going through this current situation. And we do hope that it would definitely help. So what does normal parenting look like? In the familiar world before COVID-19, how parents manage their children's activities, environments, and disciplines varied across different households. We parenting situations: two-parent nuclear family homes, single-parent homes, blended homes, extended family homes, housemates with children, shared custody situations, extended family, and diverse supporting structures to include friends, teachers, after-school programs, and daycare facilities. So routines on a typical day would consist of getting the children ready for their day program, be it school or daycare, and parents typically go to work. Children return home at the end of the day. Some walk, some catch the bus, others catch rides, or they're picked up by family, parents, friends. Some go to after-school activities, or they go by extended family members who are able to supervise them until their parents come home. Regardless of the situation, for the most part, our children were monitored by various individuals throughout the day, providing them with diverse experiences, expectations, and autonomy. In most situations, parents are not consumed with the sole responsibility of molding and providing for all their children's developmental needs. Our situation has restricted the dependence of outside influences to assist us with the nurturing and supervision of our children. With schools and daycare centers closed, the daily routines are different. Parents find it challenging to provide much more than they provided before the pandemic. We all have our different experiences, and the challenges vary depending on the composition of the number of children in the house, ages, their level of academic discipline, and their available resources would affect how well parents can cope. The employment status of parents and guardians, the number of adults remaining in the home during the school day, their education level and occupation, and many other factors also influence how parents can manage. What we recognize and anxiety levels are higher than before the pandemic, and tolerance and patience are lower. As each family and situation is different, what I think helps us to cope is the fact that we are all in this together. You are not alone. The question for each parent, regardless of their unique situation, is how do I cope? There is no single answer to the countless situations we each encounter, but there are some general tips we can share with you to bring some level of control to parenting struggles that we are experiencing. So let's look at a few suggestions to keep calm and to manage stress. We can learn to know tolerance and accept these are our current challenges, but we will survive. Emotional tolerance provides opportunities for self-soothing. We need to love ourselves, be compassionate, treat ourselves with kindness to reduce our out-of-control emotions. It also provides us with the opportunity to get creative and develop a plan to address our unique challenges. We want to take a rest, R-E-S-T, relax. It helps you to think clearly. Evaluate your current situation. Set an intention of what you need to change and take action. Remember that you want to do something, and now is your opportunity. We can practice mindfulness activities to keep ourselves calm or to calm down if we're experiencing unpleasant emotions. Pause if you are overwhelmed. Using mindfulness techniques, deep breathing, and staying in the present is very helpful. Think that can for each child at this moment. Later on in the presentation, we will have the opportunity to walk through this experience. We want to maintain positive and healthy communication. Be willing to listen actively. Practice patience. Sometimes we need to take a deep breath before responding to situations that are tense or annoying us. Then we can respond in a calm and gentle tone of voice. Using what, how, and when, rather than using why questions, and we should avoid statements beginning with the word you. Stay connected with family help is needed. Reach out and ask for some assistance to help you cope with your parenting challenges. Also, depending on the ages of your children, we can establish a ritual healing. However, in doing so, you have to validate their feelings, give space for expression, and remember, why don't you? Is a negative way to communicate. So, hence, those three words, defensive mode. Instead, you can ask what questions, like, what can I do to help? What is driving that feeling? Developing a schedule helps us stay in control of ourselves by establishing new routines that would accommodate our unique and evolving circumstances. You can choose 2 or 3 activities to anchor each day. This can look like having morning devotion, dining table, and perhaps an afternoon walk through the neighborhood or around the yard, or even family playtime. If you are working from home, you can also try to align your work schedule with your children's schedule to ensure that when they go on break, you are also taking a break so that you can be there to provide that support for them. And we can plan to have our children learning experience one. To do this, we can ensure that our children have what they need to attend their virtual classroom sessions in a comfortable learning environment. Sometimes, depending on our circumstances, very creative. It might mean repurposing an empty or a dead corner in the house or a section of the living or dining room. Depending on the age, you may even need to get smaller furniture to ensure feet can rest flat on the ground when they're sitting. If you have 2 or more children, ensure that each child has a workstation, if possible, and if not, perhaps using those stereo phones, headphones, studio headphones may help to minimize the distractions. Once you have provided for your children's comfort, it will help you to cope better. We have identified some strategies for parents to manage the challenges of parenting through the pandemic. And later in the section, we'll have the opportunity to practice some of these techniques. But before we explore techniques, Ms. Dean will identify what children are experiencing. She will also answer how can parents balance their parenting goals, other responsibilities, and anxiety during this pandemic.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Kaya, for your introduction. In a child's experience while being at home and learning at home, there's a tendency for them to lose some form of sense of autonomy or independence. We ask that you try not to hover or helicopter parents while the child is learning or attempting to learn during their school class time. Check to ensure that your child is engaged and completing assignments. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be there with them, but you check in on them. Make sure that they are paying attention during the online learning and they're completing the assignment within a timely fashion. Build a relationship with teachers and other parents to encourage feedback and support. During these times, especially, I think it would be very useful to utilize the PTA and other parent-teacher associations to increase the communication between both parents and the school. By this way, we allow for the child, the teacher gets feedback as to how the child is probably getting the information, and the parent gets the information from the teacher as to how if the lesson is coming across to them. Address unpleasant family challenges. Reduce the anxiety in children regarding the finances by encouraging good use of available resources. Now, as most of us know, some persons have lost their income or will be losing their income. Most situations with finances are up in the air right now, but we must still keep a cool head about the situation and be realistic and allow the child to have realistic expectations. Christmas is coming, and based on previous years, the child has expectations and a wish list more than likely. Try to go through with them and let them know what are going to be realistic financial expectations during this upcoming season. Reassure children if a family member has COVID-19 about living with the virus. It is very important, as in our last presentation, that we encourage and we educate our children as to how to handle and deal with the COVID-19. We teach them how to wash their hands. We teach them how to stay a safe distance away from that particular family member. And in some cases, unfortunately, that staying away and social distancing may even be difficult due to the cramped situations that they are living quarters that they're living in. Settle disputes with other adults positively or in private. Many reports have come back across the region as well as the world that domestic violence as well as child abuse is on the rise during these times of quarantine. We beg of parents to please find more effective ways of dealing with your anger and your emotion. Remember, whatever you mirror to them, they're going to mirror back to you. Next slide, please, Mr. Kenzie. Uncomfortable environment. Now, basically, our homes have been a place where we are able just to rest our heads at the end of the day. But now they're actually places where we have to interact with each other, where we have to spend more time with each other. And it's even if you're living in a mansion, but being home 24/7 or for the most part of the day with other persons, you're going to feel cramped and uncomfortable. But we must find and make designated spaces, as Ms. Mackenzie mentioned before, for children to be able to have their space and their time. Lack of positive reinforcement. Children don't have the actual supports that they used to of having their teachers, probably being able to see their grandparents, depending on the circumstances and the quarantine levels that you have in your particular communities. Lack of social and peer connection. Now, this is where we see the introduction of them feeling sad, withdrawn, because they're not able to call or interact with their friends. It's going to be a very steep adjustment curve for them knowing or not being able to hug their friends when they finally meet with them and interact as they used to. So it's always very good to start letting them know and educating them on proper protocols and etiquette for the COVID-19 situation. Next slide, please, thank you. COVID-19 stress and the family, especially in terms of the children and with the adults, whether we want to admit it or not, it is we are experiencing a form of loss. We are losing our free time, we're losing our social interactions, we're losing our social support, etc. And so as a result of that, we have a tendency to have different stages of grief and loss. So you may see things like denial, depression. The children may want to bargain, thinking that if they could make a deal with mommy, then they can go outside and play with their friends. But we also have to allow them to work through it and come to a period of acceptance. So we try to model the behavior that we expect from them. We ignore and redirect negative behaviors. We have realistic expectations. If you're having issue with not being able to be as mobile and as interactive or as social with other persons, they are going to have that issue as well. Maintain your basic family structure. Engage in new family traditions. These are different ways of taking your mind off of just being in the house and enclosed with each other. Try cooking. You know, in the morning, Sunday mornings, everybody gets up and they make breakfast. Each child or each person is responsible for a particular activity. After that, for most persons within our region, we are spiritual persons and we attend church. So you still have a session where you do your morning meditation, your praise and worship. Try to keep it as familiar and as scheduled as you would normally have it pre-COVID. Reward efforts and good behavior, both in adults and in children. You know, tap yourself on the back for making it through the day without having to take, for instance, yell at a child or yell at somebody or your spouse or your partner. Most importantly, be kind to each other. It is a time that we should express and be as patient as we can with one another, recognize that each person learns in a different capacity, and our languages of expression are different, and we must also be able to appreciate the difference. Next slide, please. Balancing your parenting roles with other responsibilities and anxieties. A great jazz musician, Mr. Sam Cooke, once had a song that said, "A change is going to come." Yes, we're having and experiencing all these uncomfortable, how should I say, these uncomfortable lack of social interactions, lack of mobility, lack of being able to do what we want when we want. But we also have to look at what's going to be coming down through the pipeline. Here in the BVI, at Health Services Authority, most of our staff are persons who have migrated from their country and they have brought their families here with them. We have to look at the reality of what the economic backlash is going to be. Part of the economic backlash may be that some families may have to separate. Some families may have to send their children back to their grandparents in their country of origin. Some parents may have to move on to other countries for those who are located here in the BVI and leave their families behind. But we must be realistic about their expectations. We must be honest and be upfront with the family as to what our plan is going to be. So it's not going to come as a surprise when it does happen, if it does happen. Pace yourself. Things are happening rapidly, quickly, sometimes quicker than we can stay abreast with. But pace yourself. Do one thing at a time. That whole adage about, you multitasking, and so it does not lend to efficiency. Try not to parent from anger or guilt. In the decisions that we're going to have to make coming up, especially with the economic challenges that most persons are going to have, try not to be feeling guilty and try to, give children more things to occupy themselves in order to apologize for not being there for them. Try not to, when you are upset, try not to interact in an angry way with the children or anyone else in the house. So we just need to be mindful when we're interacting with our loved ones. Schedule adult time. It is very important that as adults, we take time for ourselves. It doesn't necessarily have to be as flamboyant as it was pre-COVID, but any little thing from a cup of tea to waking up, you might have to wake up a little earlier, that way the house is quiet, or go to bed a little later because the house is quiet and you have a one-on-one time with yourself. It could be a cup of tea, it could be watching your favorite show, it's up to you. Engage in regular self-care. When we engage in regular self-care, we show our children how they are to take care of themselves. Yeah, these are also efforts and ways of reducing stress and anxiety in ourselves and the persons we share our home with. Remember, you are doing the best you can with what you have. At this point in time, there are no bells and whistles, it's just the basics. The road ahead. There's no such thing as balance or perfection. When we say that, what is meant? Balance, everybody looks at a scale and everything being all equal. Not in life. In life, what balance means is that you're paying attention and giving attention to the thing that is demanding your attention at that particular time. Yes, sometimes things fall. Yes, sometimes we're not able to give or be able to interact with persons as much as we'd like to at the time, but do what you can when you can. Remember to teach and educate your family about COVID-19 hygiene and etiquette, washing your hands regularly, wearing your face mask when you're out in public, standing social distancing, standing at least 6 feet away from other persons. If you have a cough, you're coughing into your shoulder, into your elbow, etc. Make sure you wash your hands before you eat, all these things. Try to zone your home. As Ms. McKenzie mentioned earlier, let's have areas for work, play, and even to have a down cyber-free zone. When in that area, you're not allowed your cell phone, you're not allowed the television, you're not allowed your tablet. You're just quiet. Use crayons, coloring, what other activities, play games, board games, any other activity to interact other than anything to do with a cyber or being linked in. Communicate honestly about the situation. When we as a family are going through hard times, it is best to be honest with the children or anybody else in the home. That way they don't have false expectations of you or of the situation. And they will then understand that you are doing the best you can with what you have. It also allows them to find their role and be a participant in helping rather than just being a dead weight or not being able to participate. Educate your family about safe online behavior. In this time, we are using mostly online interactions, but we also have to educate, especially our children, in terms of what to do if there's an inappropriate pop-up. You know, certain security measures may not be implemented on your particular device. We also have to burn and clear whatever browser histories we've had and make sure that they know what is safe and what is not safe. Most of the devices controls are advised to utilize those things, even if it's in a temporary situation. Allow a safe place and activities to express feelings. Most persons aren't always verbal and can't always put across what they feel, but sometimes they can draw or color or write a poem to express their feelings. And we must be able to accept and appreciate that. And most of all, make the most of your family time, especially for persons who may have to change their family dynamic by having to send children away or having to move into a smaller place, etc. Make the most of the time you have now with your family, because once we're back into getting a new normal from the COVID, we're going to miss the time that we had as a one-on-one to get to know our family. And here are just a few resources from further information. Thank you, Ms. Huggins.
Thank you very much to both Ms. McKenzie and Ms. Dean for that presentation. We'll save questions for the end, and with their permission, we'll share the presentation with all of the participants. Our next presentation is from Dr. Alan Dyer and Dr. Jacqueline Prasada. They are psychiatrists and faculty of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. I will put up your presentation in just a moment. It looks like Alan might be having some connection issues, so I'll look out to see if he joins us during the presentation. But in the meantime, Dr. Prasada, I think you can take over. Let me put up the presentation. And just let me know when to change the slides. I think your mic is still on mute, Dr. Prasada.
Go. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And so thank you to Ms. McKenzie and Ms. Dean for seems like we're going to cover a lot of something similar. So just has been really expounded upon. Really vital to being a good parent during this pandemic is caring for yourself. Because just like the flight attendant says, during emergencies, you have to first put on your mask before putting on your child's mask, because your children are looking to you on how to manage anxiety and how to set expectations and how to deal with these ever-changing circumstances. So I'm just going to introduce two very short, simple activities that I hope you will be able to use in times with your kids. And they're both going to be, I think, very related to what Ms. McKenzie brought up of the REST acronym, allowing you to rest and evaluate before taking action or responding to your children. Next slide. So, the main, I think as psychiatrists, the way that we really think of this is just there's so much uncertainty, especially as Ms. Dean mentioned, about how we don't know if families will have to move or what will happen. But if we're aware of the uncertainty as a stressor, we can, take some action to deal with it. Maybe not get rid of it, which is impossible, but really to understand how it's affecting us. So think mind-body strategies, and all this really means is our anxiety and our, sadness or our worries can show up in our body. So being aware of the body and how the mind impacts it can help us take care of ourselves. And so one of the activities we'll do is being aware of physical sensations to help get in touch with your body and what that means to control anxiety. I think a lot of this was covered, so this will be shared with you guys, so we can go to the next slide. Same thing. A lot of this was covered. I think we were, it's excellent how much was covered beforehand. Oh, next slide. Okay. So what is mindfulness? A lot of this, mindfulness is the word I think that's thrown about of, if you practice mindfulness, everything's gonna be better. Mindfulness is more of a way of getting in touch with your body, your mind, and your emotions. And it can be a form of self-care because it is about pausing and taking inventory of what's going on. So very much like was mentioned, mindfulness incorporates paying attention to what your body is feeling, what your mind is thinking, your surroundings, setting an intention. So I think if you start your day with a devotional, or if you are somebody who wakes up and makes a list for the day, the intention is the North Star. So how do you want to be today? And we'll cover a bit more of that. Do you want to be compassionate, kind, patient? Do you just want to not get angry? Setting that intention at the beginning of the day can help us pay attention to how things are going. Kindness. I like to think of kindness as an umbrella over all of mindfulness, because if we must be kind to ourselves and others to cultivate mindfulness. And then being in your body. The reason that this is important is that so much of our anxiety feels like or we think it's in our head. Our minds are racing. We can't go to sleep because our minds are racing. We can't focus because our minds are doing things that we can't control. But it also comes through in your body. And the other part is that sometimes your body can help calm you down. That out of all of the bodily systems that are revved up by stress, our breath and our breathing is one of the few things that we have control over. So this is why taking a deep breath is part of calming down, that our heart rate can speed up, we can have tension in our body, we can feel like we're breathing fast, but usually by breathing deeply, we can start to calm down the nervous system that really gets revved up by anxiety. Next slide. So this is kind of, sums it up all up. Is our mind full, like the person who's just thinking about everything that's happening and, the bad things, the good things, or are we being mindful? So are we being in the present moment, seeing exactly what is in front of us, which in this case is the trees, and so that's what the dog is seeing. But I think in our own life, we can get really wrapped up with thinking about the past, planning for the future, setting those expectations, and sometimes just noticing, how you're feeling. Are you feeling happy, sad? Noticing that your child did something really interesting. That is a moment of mindfulness where you take a moment and just notice the moment, notice the present moment as it is without trying to change it. So next slide. So we're going to do a couple minutes because I want to be mindful of time for question and answers. This is an activity that you can do at home. You can do it with your kids. You can do it just when you want to take a break. So we're going to really feel it into our body. So what I'd like you to do is, if you're sitting or if you're standing, just come to a still position. If you're sitting, put your feet flat on the floor, your hands on your thighs, and if you'd like, you can close your eyes, or you can keep them open. And what I just want you to do is, you can think of this as meditation, or you can just think of this as taking a moment to be in your body. So really feel into your feet. Press your feet down into the ground and notice the pressure of the floor against your feet, perhaps of your socks against your feet or your shoes. And just imagine that your awareness is just this ring around your feet. And you notice how the ground, the earth is holding you up. And then bring that same attention to the backs of your legs against the chair. Just feeling the pressure. What are the sensations there? And if you notice that your mind wanders to something else or is thinking about something else, just bring it back to the feelings of your feet on the ground and your butt in the chair. And then to connect to our body even more, we're going to just do we're going to do some stretches, if you will. So I want you to slowly raise your arms up against your head, up above your head, but move more slowly than you usually might. Kind of imagine that you're moving through Jell-O. And really taking note of the sensations there. How does it feel when your arms are moving up above your head? Do you feel the cloth against your shoulders or your arms? And then once your arms are above your head, even notice there how maybe the sensations in your hands or your fingers are different from when they were sitting on your legs. And now leaning over to the left. Imagine stretching over to the left, like you're trying to grab something off a really tall tree, and noticing any sensation that comes up in your body. For me, it's somewhere in the side of my body and my hands, but noticing anything that comes up, whether a neutral sensation or even pain, just noticing. And then come back to center, and then reaching over to the right with both hands. And just by changing this movement in our chair of reaching up and above, you're changing the shape of your body. And I just want you to notice those sensations. And then come back, bring your arms down, and go really slowly. Because the more slowly we go, the more we can notice. And letting your arms come down and then bringing them to your hand, to your lap, and just noticing any change in the sensations. Maybe is there a change in temperature, tingling, maybe one hand feels different than the other. And then the last movement is just going to be kind of like a back stretch, like a twist. And I know it's really common to hold a lot of tension in back, neck. So what I just want you to do is in your chair, just put your right arm on the bottom of the chair or on the arm if there is one, and look over your left shoulder. Sorry, look over your right shoulder. So a bit of a twist. And you can even bring your left hand to your right knee and pull. And here, I want you to notice as you breathe in, if there's a change in how your breath feels. Because as we're twisting, we're kind of changing the shape of our lungs. And then coming back to the center, pausing here, and then twisting the other way. So bringing your left hand to either the chair on the side or if you have an arm on your chair, looking over your left shoulder, taking your right hand to the knee, and just looking back, and just twisting and looking back. And you can notice if there's any sensations along your spine, if they come from your hips, your neck. And looking forward, and we're going to end here with just a couple neck rolls, because I imagine if any of you guys are working at home that you're in front of a screen, and these are just really short exercises you can do that not just stretching, but stretching intentionally and paying attention. So just bringing your right ear to your right shoulder and just rolling your neck forward, left ear to left shoulder and back. And when you feel a sensation, I just want you to pause wherever that is, notice what it is, notice if you have any thoughts like, oh, my neck hurts, or I'm so stressed, or any number of things. Notice it, but then keep moving your neck back and forth. Just try to be aware of just the sensations. You may have thoughts, you may be hearing noises, you may have emotions that are coming up, but just being with the sensations as you sort of stretch your neck and move your neck back and forth. And then looking up, and we're going to end with just 3 deep breaths, and you can take them on your own. But the type of deep breathing that you do when you think you want to relax. So just taking a deep breath in through your mouth and letting it out. And taking 2 more. And as that ends the practice, I just want you to ask yourself, what did I notice? And what did I learn? We can talk about this if we have time in the discussion, but I hope that you notice that even just taking a few minutes to do some really simple stretches and noticing the sensations and your body instead of, thinking, multitasking, thinking ahead, planning while you're stretching, that maybe you notice that you're feeling, if not a bit calmer, but at least a bit more aware of your body. Okay, so going on to the next exercise, which will be more applicable to parenting. Next slide.
Dr. Prasada, I noticed that we have Dr. Dyer with us. I'm unable to make him a panelist for some reason, but I'm going to unmute his microphone so that he can contribute. Dr. Dyer, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I got dropped, and I'm sorry, but I have a capable companion, and I just want to say of what I did hear of the previous presentations, excellent, excellent.
All right, thank you. So I think, so just again, that part of mindfulness is the paying attention, which we just practiced, paying attention to sensations in our body. And the next thing we're going to work with is, again, paying attention, but also with your intention. So next slide. So this next exercise is about taking a mindful pause, and hopefully the acronym can help you. So you can practice this anytime throughout the day. Sometimes it feels more natural in a way to practice it when you're in a difficult situation, but the more that we practice it just in the morning when we're waking up or during a non-stressful situation, the more likely we're going to use it. But the acronym is to stop and pause what you're doing, take a deep breath, and observe what's happening around you. So is the situation around you, if you're having physical sensations, which is what we just practiced, if you notice like when you get angry, your chest gets tight, that type of connection, thoughts and emotions. And then the P is, what is my purpose? So as discussed by Ms. McKenzie and Ms. Dean, with our kids, if the purpose has become not to answer with, why don't you? Then maybe your purpose is to change your communication. If your purpose is to be patient, you can think about that and then proceed. So now that you know your purpose or your intention, what needs to be done. So the key thing here is your purpose. It can be anything. It can be an attitude that you want to choose at the beginning of the day, patience, calm, compassion. It can be purpose right in the moment. My purpose is not to yell at my child. My purpose is to answer this email so I don't get fired, or something, my purpose is to set good expectations. So just your purpose can be whatever is useful to you in that moment, but taking it into account before you proceed with your actions. Next slide. So these are just some of the attitudes of mindfulness that I mentioned that, I'm sure you have things that are close to your heart that you might want to choose as an intention. But I like some of these because for me, they correspond a lot with spirituality, the kindness, generosity, gratitude, patience, but even things like humor or just being curious about a situation can help us stop and think about our purpose. Next slide. So the reason why we use the pause is just because we want to create a bit of space between the stimulus, which could be any number of things, and our reaction to it. So by taking a pause, taking a breath, using that time to think, we can respond to a situation, which in this case, thinking about our kids, respond to them instead of reacting strictly from our emotions or from think of it like your instinct that you might want to snap or you might want to yell or you might want to use a tense tone of voice, but if you pause, you can change how you react to a response. So just to practice it in your real life, we'll do one more activity. Next slide.
And let me add something to that one, because for children whose brains aren't as developed, the space between stimulus and reaction may not have the same capability that an adult would. So children will often act out their feelings rather than articulate their feelings, and then adults may be inclined to react rather than respond. And so I particularly like that slide for that reason.
Yeah, and and I agree with that because, just different stimulus and stressors feed off of each other. So you can think about the mindful pause as a way to break the chain reaction and maybe change the direction of how, a discussion or an argument might go. The next slide. So let's just pause one more time. And what I'd like you to do is, I'll give you a minute to think about one difficult situation in this past week. With your children or a child when you wish you could pause before reacting. And it's important just to choose one and to really just go back and be in that moment. Even what were you wearing? What were they wearing? What was the situation? How are you feeling? And just immerse yourself in that moment and then think about that if you could do it again, how would you apply the pause to that event in your mind? And so I'm going to be silent for 30 seconds and I just want you to think about that moment. And you have the acronym there to allow you to do it. So stop, take a breath, observe what's happening. What did you want your purpose to be? And how could you have proceeded if things could have been different? Okay. And so hopefully by just taking that moment to reflect, you'll want to use the pause. And just, I like to stop because you can always just think of the stop sign. Stop, take a breath, observe what's happening, what is my purpose, and to proceed, what needs to be done next. And that's it for me. And take care of yourself. And we hope that these skills and what has been presented today will help you do that.
Thank you, Drs. Prasada and Dyer. And as we mentioned with the prior presenters, we will share the recording of this webinar, and with their permission, we will also share this PowerPoint with you. So I want to open it up now to any questions or comments. You all have your mics on mute, but if you click the button that has the little raised hand symbol, I will be sure to unmute your microphone so that you can speak. I'm not seeing any hands up right now, so our presenters can also feel free to ask any questions or make any comments.
I was wondering if Ms. McKenzie could repeat the REST acronym again, because I thought that corresponded really well with the STOP. And just sometimes having those like simple go-to exercises can help in stressful moments.
Certainly, yes. The rest, R is for relax. And what you're doing is that you're taking that moment to count clearly about what is happening. And then you can evaluate in that moment. After you've taken a pause, basically, you get to evaluate the current situation. And then you set an intention. So you're basically making a plan at this time of what can I do to change my present circumstance? And how can I do it? And then the plan was what you came up with, and you know you need to follow through with that plan. And that's where you take action. So it's rest, evaluate, set an intention, and then you want to take action.
Thank you. Yeah, I do have a lot in common, so I think it's just nice to kind of think of them both together about taking a pause, observing what's happened, knowing your purpose so that you can take that action and proceeding with the plan.
In addition to raising your hand, please feel free to type any questions or comments you have into the chat. It looks like we do have a comment from Ben. I'm going to unmute your microphone right now.
Yes.
Hello?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, hi, we hear you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Yes, I was very much impressed with the presentation. And what my takeaway is mindful versus mindful. And at that time, I was thinking on the process, looking at the picture, that the first one with mindful, how are we going to declut? The adults, the parents, the children will need to do a lot of declutting, and it will take a process. And then the speaker also talks about adults taking care of themselves, or the adult care versus the family care. that too is going to take a process. And the presenter also talked about the home used to be a place just to go and sleep. But now it is a home, a place where you're going to be meeting all family members. You never used to be socialized. You never used to be in that social space all the time. So now it's another process. And I found that the exercises that you did, the pauses, the rest, will help us to declutter and then try to start over again, make a new page. So I really found that to be very much interested. So now my question, which I haven't really phrased, dealing with children with special needs. I have been looking to see how well the parents are managing this, because all they're asking when school is going to be open. It's like they have had enough and they want school to be reopened. So how long is a process in order to get to the other stage? That's it.
So I think one of the things that might be useful to say about this is that this is a time of great uncertainty, which is an experience we all share, and also the kinds of things that orient our lives, typically the routines, the going to work, the kids going to school, the separations, the coming back together, all of these things we're now deprived of, and that only adds to the uncertainty, the stress, the anxiety. So it was nice to hear the concordance, the similarities of the various approaches to dealing with that. And then when you talked about the stages of grief, the stages of loss, that we all are experiencing a loss, and we do have feelings of denial, it's all going to be all right soon, of anger, what's wrong with this, and even acceptance, coming to accept reality, which isn't the ideal reality that we would hope for, but still to recognize the feelings we do have and the hopes that we do have, and then adjust to this new reality.
What I would also like to add to that, the needs, parents actually do now have a greater responsibility to be more involved, and they need to be very creative. Now is an opportunity for them to really understand, what the limitations of the children are, that the child is, and come up with creative ways to manage them while they're still at home. For instance, if the child is artistic, then providing more activities for that child to do a structured day. I think they need that to be able to take them through the day without being irritated and suffering from, high levels of stress, especially given that their regular routine has been interrupted, and these are children that need structure. So parents would definitely need to be more involved in creating that level of structure and be creative with coming up with activities for that child to do throughout the day, things that the child actually enjoy doing, and being able to supervise those activities as well. And if it's a case be at home because they have to go to work, linking with other friends or family, maybe even the neighbor who might be at home, involve them to be a part of this process, and so that child can be cared for and their needs can be met. And I think that can also help the parents to reduce their own level of stress and anxiety, knowing that you can rely on support from even the neighbors around them during these times.
Any other questions or comments from our participants? Okay, it looks like we've got a quiet group here today, but please feel free to, we will share the recording with you as well as the presentations, and feel free to suggest any other ideas for future webinar topics that interest you, or to ask any questions when you do receive that. So with that, I want to give a special thanks to all of our presenters today, Ms. McKenzie, Ms. Dean, Dr. Dyer, Dr. Prasada. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you to all of our participants today for joining us. Just a friendly reminder, please, your participating in this survey that you'll receive shortly would really help us to improve these webinars. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.